Okay, so moving on, um, still on relationship memo, but there we have the overview and the overall, and of course the history.
Yeah, so just to give people a feeling, and you would know this, Shanaz, as well as I do. We had memos due every month. There was a schedule, and you tried to even it out so there wasn't like, a bunch due at the end of the year or something like that. Uh, but the decision maker had to make a decision at that point in time. They, we couldn't just kick it into another month. Actually, there was some ways you could do that, but you rather not do that. Uh, and so we needed to make it actionable. We needed to give the reader enough so that they could make a decision at that point in time. And we'll talk in the decision thing about how you deal with it if you need more facts or you need more time or whatever. But the key focus on a relationship summary, I can't emphasize this enough, it's on the decision makers. It's not your regulator, it's not your auditor, it's not someone else. The relationship memo is to allow the decision makers, and I mean decision makers from the bottom part of the underwriting all the way up to maybe the head of international, to make an informed decision and have people reconstruct what they knew at the time they made that decision. If you're presenting this just so that we've got a story to tell, some uh, stakeholder who's looking at it 5 years later, you really miss the point.
Mm-hmm. Yes, exactly. Absolutely.
So, as far as the type of things that we start with, on the overview, I want to understand the personality of the bank. We talked about this earlier. I want to know its size. I want to know, kind of the ownership. I want to know, who the general customer base is, that sort of thing. Uh, every bank has its own unique personality. So before I ever get to a risk issue, I want to understand the bank itself. The type of bank. Is it mid-sized regional? Do they deal with the largest companies in that country? Do they have non-resident? Do they have a specialized niche? And then I need to have some sort of metric for materiality. What should I expect? That senior decision makers would know about. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so,
Yeah,
and that would
absolutely.
not just be for, you know, non-US respondent banks, but it would be true for US banks as well.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
would have different expectations for a small US bank than I would for a very large US bank.
Exactly. So, yeah, and one point that many banks feel comfortable just meeting the standard of their regulators, but I think that we definitely want to hear your views and for the audience that just meeting the regulators standard may not be sufficient. I mean, based on the financial institution and the country.
Well, I would agree with that 1,000%. I'd probably be a little bit more blunt as far as I'm dealing with that. Uh, the regulators are always the last to know of any problems.
Mm,
And, you know, I can't tell you the number of times in the United States that our regulators had huge misses and the existential harm had been done to the bank, way before, the regulators knew about it. And, the way we deal with it in the United States is, we call the regulators before Congress and question them, like, where were you? How did you let this happen? So I 100% agree with you that, regulatory approval is setting way too low of a bar.
yeah.
And what I've told people internally is, I said, we're judged by our decisions, particularly on the material issues. If we make a materially bad decision, regardless of why we did it,
Hmm.
that's going to get us a checklist or regulatory approval or whatever is going to get us about 30 seconds into a conversation. And then, it's either concluded we had a poorly designed system or we didn't execute the system we said we would. But if you make a bad decision, you look at any of the major cases, like what the regulator said was not a defense. It
Right.
was like, well, you knew A, B, and C, and you still went ahead. Uh, and, if anything, the regulator was criticized as well as us. So I
Absolutely.
think regulatory approval is way too long,
Mm,
low standard.
great. Okay, so I'll move on.